Hey everybody, how you doing after the weekend? we're going to talk some Oklahoma Sooners. I just got done doing a podcast that will potentially be out tomorrow, previewing the week 3 FBS versus FCS games that we're going to be seeing. But we are still going through. I would be like running way late on the previews at this point. I'd be like really pushing to try to get them all done. I guess I sort of still am, but I will not be finishing them clearly before the college football season finishes. But today we are going to preview the Oklahoma Sooners, a team that made the playoff again, failed to advance again, but a team that I think you could still argue has a really bright future with their head coach Lincoln Riley. And what they're doing here. And in our preview, as you said, I think a lot of the optimism that you bring in about this Oklahoma team really comes from, what we believe that they're going to be able to do on the defensive side of the ball, which has been a major liability for them. So they finished out last season number 9 overall in beta rank. A little bit of a step back from where they'd been. Oklahoma hasn't been in the range of, where the, Alabama and Clemson or, LSU has been, or LSU ranked last season. But they have been solidly in that 5-ish, 6 range, sometimes 4, sometimes 3, these last couple seasons in college football. They have last year, they did take a little bit of a step back on offense from where they had been. Even though they improved significantly on defense, it wasn't enough to really offset where they'd been and get them closer, even as, the top teams, as they found out having to play the top team in college football in the playoff, continued to really improve and expand. The space, the metric space that we measure college football teams in. Oklahoma's, as the top of that grade keeps improving, Oklahoma, has more catching up to do. We dropped a whole bunch of frames again. That is so frustrating. Just so frustrating. All right, we've reconnected. I'm going to cross my fingers that this is going to hold. And I really apologize for everyone that was watching on the Periscope that we had the drop frames issue. I will try to recapitulate quickly what I was yakking about. Oklahoma finished last season number 9 in beta rank, a little bit of a drop down for them. Some of that came from the offense falling off a little bit from where they had been. The defense did take a big step forward under new defensive coordinator Alex Grinch, a guy we really like. Here, at Sharp College Football. I think that I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Rob Bowron for Sharp College Football. We're going to preview Oklahoma today. I would say that is part of why we think that there is such a bright future for Oklahoma. Even as the top part of college football, the top teams have increased the distance between themselves and other teams. Oklahoma still has, we believe, the talent and the coaching staff to eventually catch them. So I know a lot of people have there's a little bit of Oklahoma fatigue in seeing them plugged into the playoff. And they've had some good showings. They've also had some less good showings in the playoff. I think that, Oklahoma is a team, we have them projected at number 5 coming into this year. I think there's certainly upside versus this 5 number as well. I mean, there's always potential downside too, but I think there's definite upside for this Oklahoma team versus this number 5 projection that we have for them. And certainly finishing out better than they did last season at number 9. So the head coach is Lincoln Riley. Oklahoma did one of the best transitions, in transitioning to Riley from Bob Stoops. Riley is, for my money, the best offensive mind in college football. You could argue perhaps now that Joe Brady's gone, but really consistently, Riley, up until last season, had produced for 3 seasons running the number 1 offense in college football in beta rank. Last season, he only produced the number 4 offense in beta rank, but Riley, I think, gives you a definite schematic advantage on one side of the football. And if you could have one side of the football figured out and it's offense, you're not in a bad spot. We've talked about a lot of, quasi, what you might think of as flawed teams out there in college football in a way. Teams that, have one side of the ball figured out and are struggling on the other side of the ball. A lot of the teams that we have covered up to this point that have that problem and are on the, that where they are much heavily more skewed towards the defensive side of the ball, and then their offense is lagging. a lot of those teams we covered a lot earlier, because offense matters more in college football right now. And the way Lincoln Riley has coached this offense really puts Oklahoma in a position to, I mean, at times have an extremely bad defense and yet still continue to be a top 10, top 5 college football team. It's extraordinary to be able to do that. And he's going to, be going in there with yet again another new quarterback coming in. This time not a transfer, someone homegrown, in their system, in Spencer Rattler. I'm interested to see. I think this defense could take a really, really big step forward again with Alex Grinch. If the offense, continues to be as good as they have been under Riley, then this could be a lot of fun to watch. So let's oh wait, I forgot. We're about to jump in. I haven't covered all the stats. I take 2 days off and I completely forget everything on how I script these out. Oh man, we are having internet issues. I just dropped again. That is atrocious. We may end up I might end up just redirecting people over to the because I'm still disconnected. I might just redirecting people over to YouTube the way this is going on the internet. So I apologize for the very bad internet connection going right now. Anyway, they finished at number 10 last year in special teams. They're at number 81 in returning production, number 7 in recruiting. I think when you go through those, like the fact that they've been pretty good at special teams speaks well. I think that leaves them in a good spot. If they can continue to produce at special teams in that level, like that's going to leave them where they're not, giving up a lot of hidden yards. There is still headroom for them to improve there. And certainly you saw LSU and teams like that, last year. LSU was number 2 in special teams overall. It wouldn't hurt to, finish in the top 3 in special teams for Oklahoma next year. 81 in returning production. They are a little skewed more towards the defensive side of the ball with what they're bringing back. Still, Riley, I think, and that offense has shown that they are able to very much be able to replace players. I expect that this offense will, be good despite the fact they don't have as much coming back. That 7 in recruiting is good. I think with, they're not in the range of some of the SEC powers and just pure recruiting prowess, but I do really like what they're doing. I think in the fact that they have Riley as the head coach, and I think, he does bring so much of an advantage from a play calling and execution perspective. I really think Riley can negate some of that, disadvantage that Oklahoma may have, like the slight disadvantage that they may have in recruiting. I think Riley can really help offset that with what he's able to do. So while we've still got the internet connection, I swear, like AT&T fiber is like 1 street away. Just like get 1 street over, take my money. So and let's check the audio too while we're at it. We're good still on the audio. So Oklahoma last season, number 4 on offense in beta rank. This is another really, really good offense. But as you can see, like if this is scaled, the LSU offense here is at 1. I mean, there's a decent gap between them and the number 1 offense in college football last season. And they did take a little bit of a step back. They were number 1 in 18. They were also number 1 in 17 and 16. And like LSU was so good last year and set, sort of reset that bar. You could honestly say maybe, they didn't, maybe they had just held serve at the same level that they were and they just got passed, but they did fall off a little bit year over year. Their drive efficiency number is good at number 7. They were a little better at explosive drives at number 3 overall there. Pretty good at play efficiency at number 8. Number 7 in negative drives. That's not a bad number by any stretch, and more balanced than they've been in the past. I mean, Jalen Hurts really allowed them and Riley to become a lot more creative, and I really enjoyed watching Jalen Hurts run QB power in Riley's offense. That was a lot of fun to see. But that 9-13 run pass split, I do expect them to, even as I have really enjoyed, and Riley's coupling of the power running game with the air raid. It reminds me a little bit of the Joe Tiller offenses that he used to run at Wyoming and Purdue, which combined a power running game with a wide open spread passing attack in that one back offense that Tiller ran. I really enjoy what Riley is doing with that. I'm excited to see this offense. I think they will be a little more pass heavy with Rattler in there this season. So they were number 4 last year in Pro Football Focus's grades for QB. They really liked what Jalen Hurts brought to the table for that offense. Again, Spencer Rattler, their highly regarded QB that they recruited, is going to be stepping in to play. Number 43 in Pro Football Focus's offensive line grades last season. That one hurts a little bit, I guess you could say. Like, they're going to have to improve here. They were decent in pass protection, not always great in the run game. I mean, really, Riley was able to scheme around a little bit, and Hurts was able to, move his feet around and get around some of the struggles that the offensive line had last year. They're going to need to improve, because you're not going to be able to always get around where that offensive line was last year. So they're going to have to take a little bit of a step forward here. They're 103 in returning production there. I expect that this Oklahoma offense will be, for the most part, just fine, with Rattler and Riley running the show next season. I have faith in what the Sooners are going to be able to do there. And really, I mean, if you want to see Lincoln Riley again, there's Lincoln Riley. He's the offensive play caller as well. It's this offense. And it speaks to the level of excellence that they have there, that they have been, that they fell off last year, and the fall off was only 2-4, right? I mean, I think that they are going to be in a really good spot next year to challenge for the number 1 offense in college football again. And I say that because they have continuity in scheme, at the coordinator, at the play caller. They are going to have, the new quarterback in place. They're going to have some new faces with that 103 in returning production. But, for what the other, potential top offenses in college football are bringing back, right? I mean, LSU, they are going to potentially struggle. I think when you look at, what they have, coming back with, so little returning production. Brady's not going to be there. I do think that they will continue to be good. If they can continue to be a top 10 offense and maybe be building towards next year, I think they're in a good place. Although, Jamar Chase just opted out as well. I think if you look at Alabama, they do have continuity with Sarkisian coming back. Tua is not there. What are they going to look like next season, I think, without Tua there and some of the production losses that they have? So I think that Oklahoma, steps in rather nicely to potentially, fill that void. The other team, of course, that won't be playing in the fall, I think for my money, I would probably have ahead of Oklahoma, is Ohio State. That had just an incredible offense last year, just a dominant run game with Ryan Day's scheme. And behind that had Justin Fields, who was back. So Oklahoma, I think you could easily project among the teams coming back for the fall as, likely the top, playing in the fall, likely the top offense overall. And it'll be interesting to see how we grade them out versus Ohio State, who brings back a lot and also has an excellent play caller of their own in Ryan Day. So on the defensive side, this is where, we're really excited. I'm a Pac-12 alum. I participate. I'm on a Pac-12 podcast, 12 Pack Radio. We were big admirers of Alex Grinch in his time at Washington State. He did a just tremendous job with that defense up in Pullman. So last season was his first year calling plays. And we also have some familiarity, of course, with Mike Stoops from his time as the head coach at Arizona. Anyway, they took a really big step forward under Grinch last season. So they finished last year at 50 overall. Their numbers, like where they particularly kind of shined a little bit, were on their negative drives. Shined at 39 comparatively. Finding ways to get off the field, not give up long drives. 49 on explosive drives, 31 on play efficiency. Their number that really hurt them the most was that negative drives. They didn't really come off the bench and force enough 3-and-outs. They need to have better execution, better, a little bit more of a plan coming off the bench to get off the field, and also force some turnovers. A little bit of a run pass split, 44 in effective rush, 57 in effective pass. But given how well Oklahoma's recruited, being where they are here at 50 is astounding. They need to be much better than this, and they should be much better than this. But where they were when they took, when Grinch came in and took over, and he left Washington State to go work as an on-field assistant, not as the play caller at Ohio State. So he got play calling duties coming over to the Sooners. They were at 94 in 2018, and they had really, just collapsed and fallen apart. Mike Stoops was, relieved of his duties midway through the year. The Stoops' first year there in 2015 was actually pretty good. They were at 10 on defense in his first season, but it was a really steady decline, as Sooners fans know. Up until he was relieved in 2018. They're at 48 in returning production on this side of the ball. That gives you some, real optimism, I think, for where this defense might find themselves. I think one of the main things that I want to point out, though, is that how good Alex Grinch's defenses were in Pullman. I don't know. Maybe a lot of folks, if you're watching me, you probably really are into college football, and Washington State and Pullman, that might be the hardest Power 5 job in all of college football. There's a handful of other ones that I think for very academic reasons, or like the size of the school, like if you were to talk like Wake Forest or something like that. But all of those, your recruiting is far simpler than in Pullman, which is, far closer to Idaho than they are to Seattle. You might as well be on the moon. And Grinch put together some very, very good defenses out of some, not very high recruiting classes. His 2015 defense was at 22 in beta rank. His 2017 defense was at 29 in beta rank. A lot of people think that those Washington State teams were all, those Mike Leach offenses. It actually wasn't. The offense had some really mediocre years under Mike Leach up in Pullman. He had that 2015, 2016, 2017 run. If he doesn't have Alex Grinch's defenses there, the Cougs are not a very good football team. So it's interesting because I think people in their heads, they think they think that, Mike Leach was like the last two seasons. The last two seasons they have had knocking on the door of a top 10 or a top 10 offense and a horrid defense. They have not been able to figure anything out after Grinch left. And those are also fun to watch. But for those, for Grinch's time there, like he wasn't supported by a great Mike Leach offense. And it's kind of a bummer that he wasn't, because if you had put together, either of those Grinch defenses that, were in the top 20, or in the top 30 in beta rank, along with one of those defenses that was at, or those offenses that was in the top 10, like Washington State likely wins the Pac-12 one of those years. That would have been fascinating to see. In fact, I would argue. But the Grinch made his name with undersized players playing what they called Speed D at Washington State. I wouldn't say that he has to play with undersized players playing Speed D at Oklahoma, but I think some of the same principles will be there. Really bringing pressure from different angles. Trying to get fast players onto the field to help counter the spread. I think Grinch is one of the better play callers in college football. I think he did about as good a work as you can do up in Pullman, getting those defenses into the top 30. And I think that they really have a shot here to make another really, really big leap on defense. Into the realm of where we're talking about them inside the top 20. And Oklahoma at that stage, if you have one of the best offenses in college football, and if Riley can really put them up to where they have a real big gap between them and some of the other teams they're going to be facing on offense, then you're talking about it. They can offset, some of their defensive failings that really might be there. So I think that's the real question for this Oklahoma team, I think, probably as long as Riley is there, will not circle around, what the offense is doing and what they could potentially put together, even if they have, a continuous shuffling of quarterbacks and, production losses. I think the question will be, really, because it's, if Grinch is really successful, they're likely not going to keep him. He will get a head coaching job somewhere else. Who's that defensive coordinator going to be? How do they figure out that side of the ball? I think it can, I expect Grinch to make it work. Our expectation here and why we have a lot of optimism, and I think that you have some significant upside for this Oklahoma team coming into this year is, Alex Grinch is there. And if that defense, if you're at number 7 in recruiting, you absolutely have the talent to put together, a really good college defense or, Power 5 defense. So I think Oklahoma, the ceiling for this defense really should be considered with Grinch. I mean, their ceiling next year is likely not top 5. I think that down the road, though, with if they're able to keep Grinch not just this year but next year, Oklahoma we might be talking about Oklahoma as being a top 10 defense coming that year. Depending, I'd have to go back and look at exactly what their depth chart looks like and what their production might look like coming into next year. But really, I think Grinch is that good of a coordinator, and I think that they could make that leap, which puts them into a position to where you really do have them. They could go back out and compete with an SEC team like Alabama or like LSU was last season for the national title, or Clemson. So let's look at the schedule. We spent a lot of time talking about defense with Oklahoma. I bet you weren't expecting that. Well, the title probably gave it away. What can I say? So, this is the schedule that was. I'm a little bummed we don't get to see Oklahoma probably lay the wood to Tennessee. We're not as high on the Volunteers as some folks are. The recruiting really has been there. The coaching and on the field product has not been for them. That Army game, Army took a little bit of this game, 2 years ago would have been a blast with that Army team that really just surprised everyone with their resurgence. This year, I don't think it would have been a great game for them. But after that, we would have projected them when you add in the FCS game at 5-7 wins. That's really good. I mean, when you're in that range, you're really talking about the potential to go undefeated against your schedule when you finish out in that range and your expected win total. And if you look across this, Oklahoma is a fairly sizable favorite across most of these games. So then it somewhat has been. It's not that Oklahoma, the Big 12 has been pretty good. They were pretty good last year. But there was still a gap between Oklahoma and most of the rest of the teams in the Big 12. Their closest game projection wise is that Texas game, which of course is in a neutral field. That is just under a touchdown. I think that's, about fair coming into this year. I mean, we really would we can continue to look at this version of the schedule. I mean, it's going to be slightly different in the order that these games happen in. They do get Kansas State. That game's going to be, I think Kansas State's going to be, I'm interested to see them without Scotty Hazelton as their defensive coordinator. I think you could potentially see Kansas State tread a little bit of water coming into this year. Iowa State should be fun. They could certainly overachieve their projection. We have them at 26 with Brock Purdy back, but their offense is going to have to take a little bit of a step forward, and their defense. I mean, they've been in that solid, good Big 12 team range, but they haven't been in the range where they can really, challenge Oklahoma without Oklahoma really falling flat on their face or turning the ball over. Then you get, like we said, the Texas game. We still have that projected as a neutral field game. I feel like that's about right. I think Oklahoma is going to be better defensively. I think that they will. I also expect Texas to be better defensively than they were last season, but I think Oklahoma's potential on that they can gain on with what they have with Lincoln Riley as the play caller and what they can potentially pick up on defense is actually greater. I mean, Oklahoma, because they're starting from an even lower spot than the Longhorns were on defense last year, has more potential upside. Then you get the Horned Frogs. Our projection for them, I think, is in this almost 17 points, on the road, Oklahoma a favorite. I think with Duggan out, I think this, that feels exactly right for this TCU game. Texas Tech, the Red Raiders, we're not super high on the Red Raiders coming into this year. It's almost 21 points. We have Oklahoma as the favorite there. I think that's pretty fair. Kansas, that is in no way going to be a close game. So somehow am I missing? Yep, no, that would be at 30. Yeah, almost 35 points there. Oklahoma State, this one we have, potentially as another game that's right around a touchdown. Oklahoma State really does bring back quite a lot. It's going to depend on, for Oklahoma State, if they can get the offense back on track and if the defense can really cash in on everything that they have coming back. So I expect their experiment with Gleason and the running offense for the Cowboys did not work last season. They're going to need Spencer Sanders to figure it out passing, because I do expect them to be going back to more of a passing oriented attack with the internal promotion that they have for offensive coordinator. Then West Virginia, I feel like this projection's on the high side for the Mountaineers, with, they still have a little bit of a carryover in their coaching and development variable from the Holgorsen years. I think that this is probably closer to 17 points there. And then Baylor, I know a lot of folks, I hear a lot of folks saying things that I don't buy with Baylor, frankly. I mean, I think this projection of them at 52 is about right. Their offense last season stunk. Certainly, with Fedora coming in, they could open up the offense a little bit, but I don't think that I don't expect Fedora to suddenly produce a top 25 offense in college football next season or this season. And I think that their production losses on defense are substantial, and they just don't have the kind of talent that they are in a full-on, plug and play, just roll out your replacements mode without having any fall off. So I think Baylor right here at almost 20 points actually feels about right for the Bears. I think Aranda, they'll be competitive in the Big 12, but I think that they will be worse than they were last year. So that is, the Sooners, I think, are set up in here if they can manage. If you can really manage and play well in the game, the Texas game and the Oklahoma State game, your only other real watch out maybe then is Iowa State. They're going to be significant enough favorites against most of the rest of the schedule that as long as they can avoid turning the ball over 3+ times, they're likely going to win. And that puts them in a position to potentially make the playoff. As the playoff, as it is, as we're all sure will happen. So we are big Lincoln Riley fans here at Sharp College Football and what he's doing on offense. I'm excited to see what they look like with Rattler in there, if they move back to more of a passing first attack, and how they use Rattler too. And I think that they have a lot of wide receiver talent. They not only recruit but coach up and coach well in this Oklahoma offense. But really for us too, is as much as we admire Riley, like this Grinch hire we were really big fans of, we expect it to pay out and pay out more this season. And if they can keep him, next year too, then potentially even, down the road, putting them really in solid national championship contender placement. So I apologize if you have a little bit of Oklahoma hangover, but I don't think that the Sooners are quite going anywhere. And I'll grant you without the Pac-12 and the Big Ten playing, like the chances of the Big 12 champion not being in the playoff are slim to none. But I think even with the Pac-12 and the Big Ten playing, the Pac-12 is certainly not sending a champion to the playoff this year. They're going to take a little bit of a step back this season, but the Big Ten likely would. I would still expect, unless you sent 2 SEC teams, that the Big 12 champion would be in there, and that's likely Oklahoma again. So you may have Oklahoma fatigue, but I don't know that the Sooners are quite out of it yet, unless maybe college football fans, and I wouldn't necessarily knock it if the team was close enough to deserve it. Bringing in a group of 5 team, but most of the group of 5 champions have not been in the top 10 in beta rank, and it's not worth having them. I mean, you could argue last season having Oklahoma in there to get the brakes beat off them by LSU, but unfortunately, last season was a season with 4 excellent college football teams. One of those became a very good college football team when Tua got hurt and Alabama dropped out. That meant someone was going to have to be the sacrificial lamb and step in and play LSU, and unfortunately that fell to Oklahoma. So everyone else, literally any other team you would have plugged in there would have also gotten just taken apart by the Sooners, because they were all, Oklahoma was a flawed team last year. All of the other teams behind them were also very, very flawed football teams. Oregon would have gotten destroyed. Wisconsin would have gotten destroyed. It was just there was not anyone else you could plug in there that would have made for an entertaining football game. So hopefully, though, with Alex Grinch in place, that will start to change for the Sooners. So we're going to continue to roll on and do another preview tomorrow. Tomorrow we are going to be doing the Wisconsin Badgers, a team that benefits from the new coaching and development variable that we have in the projection model this season, because Wisconsin does a tremendous job on the field and coaching and developing players. So number 4 with Wisconsin is probably they're probably their ceiling in a lot of ways. That is probably, I would not project Wisconsin as having a lot of headroom above that to really reach up into and be that number 1 team. And there's potentially, because the beta rank projections, the distribution of teams is a little compressed to reflect the fact that I like to say it reflects the fact that we don't know as much as we think about as we head into the college football season. So I don't have teams, the distribution of teams as more data grows will expand, right? Like the teams will become further apart because we are more sure about the distance between them. If you're into math, that'll make sense. But so as we come into this, like there's far more upside on teams below Wisconsin than the Badgers might have themselves. But this is a really good Wisconsin team, even though they're not playing. It's worth going into and previewing. And it's interesting if these guys don't lose any eligibility, how many guys Wisconsin brings back, because they bring back a ton off a pretty good football team from last year. So we definitely were high on the Badgers coming into this season. Not in the sense of where we would potentially project them as a playoff team, but as a team that, like for a school like Wisconsin, that recruits like they do, this may be one of the best teams that they put out in a long time, and that's worth talking about. So tomorrow we're going to preview the Badgers. Tune in for that. If you're a Big Ten fan, I mean, what else you got going on? So I'm Rob Bowron. I'm the econometrician behind Beta Rank. You can find all the stats you just saw, a lot more at sharpcollegefootball.com. I tweet out from @BetaRankFB. I also handle the tweets from @SharpCollegeFootball. There's also 12 Pack Radio. We have a Pac-12 podcast. You can find all of our podcasts from that and the back episodes from that at sharpcollegefootball.com/12 Pack Radio. I'm really sorry for the drop frames. I don't know how your internet service providers have been it's got a little slower around here. It's later, so I'm doing these later partly because of my own work schedule, but partly also because if I tried to do these during the day with everybody working from home and also their kids logged on doing online learning with video calls, it gets a little crowded on the pipes there. So I apologize for we had 2 instances where we just flat disconnected from the internet and there were some drop frames. So I do apologize for that. I seem to have, and let me double check one more time. I seem to have solved the audio issues, knock on wood. So at least we have cleared one gate, as I continue to the ever expanding, never full learning on how to, make internet videos. We've solved the audio issues. Now it is a question of probably calling out my ISP tomorrow and giving them peace of my mind. So tune in tomorrow. Stay safe out there. And thank you so much for tuning in and your patience, sticking with us through all of these videos that we have made at sharpcollegefootball.com.